I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all of the difference. In our lifetime, we will travel many roads, some long and winding, others short and brief, but there's one we will all come to face one day, a road less traveled. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host in this carol, and this is The Road Less Traveled, episode 13. And this is my fellow co host, Mr. Gerald Fountain.
How you doing?
All right. How's everything going, sir?
Going good.
Have we got a show for you folks out there tonight? Yes, sir. We have a really good show lined up. You're going to really enjoy this. Gerald and I have been really getting this one up ready for you here. And we think you're going to really like this. We're going to be talking about one of the most intriguing modern mysteries in the world today. Okay. Several of them, as a matter of fact. We're not just going to settle with giving you one here. We're going to give you some more than one. Okay. We're going to give you several to think about. But that's what we're going to be doing tonight. Tonight, we will examine on the road less traveled the Shroud of Turin, the Veil of Veronica, and the Sundarium. So we've got all three of those lined up for you tonight. Are you ready to get with it there, Gerald?
Oh yeah. Might even I have a few more things maybe we can talk about if we have time that goes right along with this subject.
Yes, it is very fascinating, very historical. If you want to tell folks what you got maybe lined up this week, and I know you got a new merchandise store here, huh?
Yeah, I put the link in the chat there and you got up on screen. So it's a new store. First one we made. So we got some products up there of t-shirts and caps and cups and all kinds. We got Chiro Sounds, the shirt that I'm wearing now. You can get this logo on a shirt and sweatshirt and everything on there, and the Night Owl Lounge. So if you go to that link, that link, you'll go to Midwest Night Watchers and mindwearapparel.com.
I got my eye on the water bottle. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Stainless steel water bottle.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, really nice. Well, we will put this up again towards the end of the show there for everybody to do that. But that's your link there.
Yep. And my other podcast project is Geezer Geeks with Robert Bauer, and it happens to be his website, and so we co-produce this website with all our products, whether it's the Geezer Geek products or the Midwest products or the Nexus has its own section also with all the same kind of merchandise. So feel free to go and shop. We'd appreciate it.
That sounds good, and we'll put that link up for you again here in a little while, definitely. And we appreciate anything the folks out there can do to help us out and buy merchandise and support us in every way you can. We really appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts, definitely. And we've got a very special show coming up on Hunting the Shadows Wednesday night, 50th show number 50. We'll be celebrating that Wednesday night. And I'm getting some good guests lined up for the show, too. So stay tuned for that. Absolutely. And I think you had a great show the other night with that, what's her name, Kerper?
Yeah, Taryn Kerper from Paranormal Brew. Yeah, she has weekly shows, and she does the same thing we do, or we do on Midwest Night Watchers. She interviews guests in the paranormal and all that stuff. So we've been following her for quite a while, and this is like the second or third time we've had her on our show.
Yeah, I interviewed her once about a year or so ago. She's done some fascinating work at Gettysburg and some of the battlefields up there. Absolutely fascinating. I've always wanted to visit there. It's got to be one of the most haunted places in this country. Definitely. A lot of lives were lost there, a lot of blood spilled in that place. Very hallowed ground, but also supposedly very, very haunted. Absolutely.
Well, like she said, there's also Native American history in that land.
Oh, yeah.
So you got that
Yeah.
on top of the Civil War and historical buildings. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Gettysburg.
Yeah, it is a fascinating place. Absolutely. Like I say, I've always wanted to go there. Been close to it, but never actually got there yet. Maybe one day. Well, we've got an interesting show for our folks tonight. You want to tell everybody, you want to lay out explain to some people who may not know. I don't know if there may be a few that don't. Exactly what is the Shroud of Turin?
All right. Well, the biblical aspect of this is when Jesus Christ was crucified and they took him down off the cross and they took him to the tomb. They prepared his body and they used a long piece of linen and it went from underneath of him and wrapped around his head and down back to his feet. And that's what he laid in the tomb with. And it transferred his image and his blood stains that you can physically see. And not only that, but they've done a lot of examination and x-rays and DNA testing and carbon dating on this to try to prove or get any information out of this. So that's what we're talking about tonight.
By the way, Newsmax had a very interesting. If you can pick up a copy of that, it's one of the most fascinating accounts of this. Newsmax. I think it's been out for about a year now, but we're going to be talking tonight about some new developments in with the Shroud of Turin. But we're also going to be talking about two other relics that you don't hear very much about: the Veil of Veronica and the Sundarium. Now, Sundarium, of course, is the supposed headcloth that was placed on Jesus when he was taken down from the cross. It would have been up under the Shroud of Turin at that time. Also, the Veil of Veronica is supposed to have been used by Veronica, who supposedly met Christ in the Via Dolorosa when he was carrying the cross. He fell, and she went up and wiped his face off. She took her veil off and wiped his face, wiped the sweat and blood off his face. And supposedly there's an image on there. We're going to be showing those tonight. We're going to be talking about some things you don't hear very often about, and the Vatican is kind of quiet about a lot of these things. And
So,
you and I both know, Gerald, the Vatican holds its secrets very close to it.
so just people know that was during the walk of passion.
Yeah, that's the walk of passion, the Via Dolorosa. You can travel it today in certain parts of the old city of Jerusalem. It's marked out and all that, but there's one section over there where he supposedly fell with the cross. Now, I think what he was carrying, actually, according to the historical accounts of crucifixion, he was carrying the crossbeam and not the whole cross. Okay. Actually, the cross, the bottom part of the cross, although we recognize today as a Christian symbol, okay, it may not have looked exactly like that. We're not sure because you're talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago, okay, and there's not a whole lot of historical records for crucifixions. We know it went on. We know that the Romans crucified people. Not only the Romans, the Egyptians did this as well, and some of the Greeks. So this was not just a Roman thing, but it's been going on for thousands of years. This was a form of capital punishment that you inflicted on people, and it was the most horrifying agonized way to die, you might say. It was bad, very bad. And you usually, most of the time, you stayed on the cross for 24 to 48 hours before you died. Jesus did not last that long because I think he was traumatized to the point where he lost a lot of blood, lost a lot of body fluid. If you lose a lot of body fluid, you're not going to last long. Okay. You dehydrate very quickly. And I think that had a lot to do with his death. So I think he only lasted like, they think, between 3 to 6 hours on the cross, probably not even that long, before he supposedly died. Now, we do know about the 5 wounds of Christ that are called the 5 wounds. The head wound with the crown of thorns, and then you have the nails, the handprints. You have that. You have the wound in the side from the spear, and then you have the feet wounds. You have the 5, what they call the 5 holy wounds. These are all present on the Shroud of Turin. Okay, and right in the right locations. Now, we've talked about this before, Gerald. When you crucify somebody, the nail did not go in the palm, because you would have pulled through. Although I'm sure they roped you on the cross to a certain extent, but that ropes would have went around your arms, probably. Maybe around the body, but definitely around the arms to keep you, because if you started bending down with the weight, you would asphyxiate very quickly. You get to the point where you couldn't breathe. And every breath that Christ took on the cross was a agonizing struggle, because he couldn't breathe. You get in a natural breathing motion because of the way he was hanging. That's part of crucifixion. That's what kills you. It shortens your breath very drastically. But they had to go with the nails through this part of the wrist here. I don't know if you can see it. This part right in here is what would have supported the weight. Okay. Now, he was not a big, fat, robust man anyway. Okay. None of the people back in that day, only rich people were fat. Okay. Most everybody else didn't get enough to eat. They didn't eat as much as everybody else did. They were not big people. They were not big, robust people. So you didn't have a whole lot of weight in the body, of course. But still, that would have supported it going through this area right here. Because there are some bones and all that, sinews, they would have held it right there. And that is what you see on the shroud. Okay. That's an interesting thing about it. It all lines up perfectly with this. In the way that it's talked about. Let me show you a brief picture here of the shroud itself. That's what it looks like if you were to go see it right now. It's in a frame, and it's only brought out on certain occasions. It's not sitting out all the time for somebody to see. Only, I think, on Easter and Good Friday and stuff like that, it's brought out, or the Feast of Ascension, certain holy days that is shown on. That is the one of the popes. I don't know if that's Pope Francis or not. I can't tell for sure. It's one of the popes praying at the Shroud of Turin. It is a very large, if you notice, compared to him, look at it. It is a very large piece of linen. Absolutely. I mean, it's what, at least 8 foot long, and
Yeah.
probably around what, 5 foot wide at least. Don't you think so?
Yeah, it's pretty wide and pretty long. I mean, it wrapped around the whole length of his body from the underneath to the top
Yeah.
to cover him up.
And now, if you look at the scorch marks where it has been repaired, you can clearly see that those are patches. That have been put in there. It almost burned in a fire, so there were scorch marks, and they had to repair it a little bit. But and here's the contention going on, that when they took samples of the cloth to analyze it age wise, they didn't take the actual cloth, but the batches, supposedly, and that's what traces back to medieval times. But now they have used, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, something called crystallography. Now, crystallography goes deeper into the fabric and gives you a better picture of age, much more accurate than what. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make this statement tonight. Now, this is very interesting. Listen very closely to what I'm going to tell you. when they first did the first scientific inquiry, and they came out and said, "Oh, it only goes back to the 13th to the 12th century," and all that, the actual people that did that study have retracted that. They said, "We've made a mistake." Okay, they actually retracted that from the scientific journal that was put in. Now that tells you, but you don't ever hear about that part. Okay.
Yeah. How often do they ever
Yeah.
retract anything?
Yeah, they retracted their things. Oh, we made a mistake. It's probably older than that, but we made a mistake. So they are telling you they made it. They had an error in it, but you never hear that part about it. It's always, oh, it was said the 13th, 12th century and all that, but you never hear the fact they retracted that. So they realized they made a mistake in the tomography of it, the way it was laid out. Now, here's the interesting thing about all this, Gerald. Now they say this cloth is exactly the same type of cloth that they have found samples of from Masada. Now, you want to tell everybody what Masada is?
I do not know. I don't know that
Okay.
term.
Masada was where it happened just like maybe 20 years or so before Christ died. There was a rebellion, and a lot of the Jewish people, the Hebrews, were killed on Masada by the Romans. It was a standoff, okay, kind of a thing. And they were a lot of them killed there. So they can actually date this to the complete time period of the life of Christ. And they have found pollens. Now, listen to this, folks. That pollens from plants that grow only in the Middle East that only would have bloomed around late March or early April, which is probably when all of this took place. Okay. All of this is lining up. There's a lot of new stuff coming down the line on this. Okay. There's a lot lining up as indicators that this may be the real, true, authentic thing. Without a doubt. But they actually have samples of cloth from that time period, and they could put them together. And if you look, and I have seen the actual comparisons of it, it looks virtually the same because of the special kind of a weave that they did. And this is not a cotton fabric, by the way. Okay, this is a linen fabric. They didn't have cotton. Well, they might have had a little cotton back then, but not like we do now. You know, the shirts we're wearing tonight, they're cotton. Okay. Most of it, a little polyester. Okay. Anyway, there was no such thing as polyester by then, definitely. But you did have linen. Linen was a weave. You wove it just like wool or flax. Okay. And that's what you compare when you look. And it sort of has a herringbone weave pattern like to it. It's amazing how this keeps all of this lines up. Okay, going to show you now. This is, of course, the face on the shroud, and this is the negative of it. Okay, it doesn't show up unless you do a negative on it. It doesn't really show. I mean, you can see it faintly, but I'm saying it doesn't really outline like it does when you do a negative. And that's another thing. Back in medieval times or back 2,000 years ago, you didn't have photographic equipment. You would have known absolutely nothing about negatives. But yet, this image is a negative, almost like a photograph in some ways.
Just so everybody knows, that's not the new picture that they've created. That's one of the older ones that when they did an experiment on the shroud.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this is now rendered in AI. I'm going to show this to everyone out there. And I want to tell you this, folks, tonight. And this kind of does it for me, too. Okay. This is an AI enhancement. What you may be looking at is the actual face of Jesus Christ. That's the AI enhancement. That's what the man on the shroud looks like. That includes the wounds, everything else. They cleaned him up a little bit because somebody in that trauma, okay, it's going to be messed up. You're going to have blood stains all over you. You know, blood goes all over you. If you've ever seen anybody in an automobile accident and all that, you end up pretty messy, okay? That's just the way that goes. So they cleaned it up a little bit with AI, but what they're trying to do is bring out the actual, imagery of it. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's amazing.
But of course, this is a big shot of the whole imagery of it. Now, here's another thing. There's somebody said this. Always people trying to come out and disprove things and all that. You always got a lot of naysayers, stuff like that. Somebody come out and said that. Okay, if you'll here's something very noticeable about that. Look where his hands are. They're covering his privates. Okay. Somebody said there's no way that you could lay flat down and cover your privates that way with your hand. Okay. And somebody says this proves that's a forgery. But hold on a minute. A lot of people can do that. A lot of people have longer arms. Okay. And listen to this, what I'm about to tell you. Okay. Do you know? I don't know if you've ever noticed this. Certain occupations you have can change your body. Okay. You can do, if you do a lot of, okay, let's just say do a lot of hammering with a hammer or sawing and stuff like that, it can make your hands bigger and more muscular. You understand what I'm saying? It can elongate your hands a little bit longer than they normally are. Okay. And other types of work like carpentry can do this to your arms. Okay. And some people are born with longer arms than other people. That doesn't mean anything. So this fallacy that's a fake don't hold up because that can be done away. And here's one more thing. If you were dead, strung out on a cross, disjointed, and probably most of his bones were disjointed by hanging on the cross, you would be able to do that with the hands and the arms. There again, it lines up and makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, well, this is the picture, I believe, from what 1978 when they did the exam of
Yeah, I think.
the shroud, and this is the one. This is the one that they used to say it was a fake.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have the technology then, even like we do now. So
that's what I say. You got now. Here's another thing. Okay, they've examined the blood stains. Now these are real blood stains on here. Okay, they're not paint. A lot of people, it was painted, it was dyed, it's burnt on there, and all that stuff. No. It does not hold up to that. These are real blood stains, and guess what they did, Gerald? It's gonna blow your mind. Okay. Let me tell you two things what happens if you, and we've talked about this before when we talked about reptilians and all this stuff, lacking blood. Okay. I want you to listen very closely to this. Okay. And I've said this before the blood is the life. The life is the blood. Okay. You got to look at it that way. Why is there something so special about blood? Now, we've talked about this before about rituals and satanic and vampires and all that. The reason they like blood, they love blood with what? Adrenaline in it. And where does that adrenaline come from? It comes from the pituitary gland mostly, okay? But it comes out when you get two things either happen to you. You get real excited, emotional, or you get traumatized. Okay? Something very big. And trauma can be fear, it can be torture, it can be pain, it can be a lot of different things, okay? The man on this shroud was tortured unbearably almost because not only have they found traces of adrenaline in the blood stains, but they have found two other things that show up in cases of trauma. Okay? I want to explain that right quick for everyone watching tonight. Two things will show up. If there's a nurse out there, she probably knows what I'm talking about, okay? Two things will show up in the blood of a trauma victim. Creatine, That's protein. Because the kidney starts putting out. Okay, I'll explain it in a minute. Creatine is one, and ferritin is the other. That shows up in the blood in great quantities of people who have gone through traumas, such as torture, pain, crucifixion, or whatever name you want to call it. Somebody's been in a terrible accident or whatever. This will show up in your blood, okay, without a doubt. Now, in cases of trauma, two things fail to function correctly: kidneys and the liver. And the liver and the kidneys are what? They are filters. They filter things out of the what? Blood, okay? And when they're not working or they're not working under duress, they will fail to keep out the ferritin and the creatine. Okay, so this man also had kidney failure going on and probably liver failure as well because he was under great traumatic injury. Shows up in the blood, Gerald. Now, how can you do that back 1,200 years ago, back 2,000 years ago? You wouldn't have known anything about creatine and ferritin. How could you put that on a cloth and you don't even know about it?
Right.
So you didn't just go get some sheep blood and smear it on here. Or you didn't just go get some monkey blood or whatever you had available and put it on here. This is the human blood put on this cloth under great duress. That blow your mind or what?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, let alone the tech. I think that's a great picture there for the technology they had at the time, let alone the AI picture we have now. This is fantastic. And they did the testing then, just like they're doing the testing now. They tried to do the fabric with carbon dating. They tried to do the scraping of the blood, try to bring it back into a living form or kind of a living form so they could do the DNA testing. And this recent one, they actually determined the blood type was AB negative, which is less than 1% of the population has AB negative.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that can be traced back to where? Middle East. Ann says that the shroud has X-ray qualities, so the fingers appear longer because you can see the bones inside it. That is, yeah, sort of an illusion in that way. But I feel without a doubt he was disjointed due to the crucifixion. I believe a lot of his joints were out of place. The shoulder joints probably, and probably some of the full arm joints and all that. I think a lot of that was out of place. I think, like you say, you're looking at massive trauma here. Okay, if I hang you on a cross tonight, Gerald, you're not going to go in a bad way. I mean, a good way. Okay, it's going to go very bad for you. Your whole body is going to suffer, not just one part of your body. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I have a little different take on all this. I know this is like an X-ray picture, but I think since he is half man and half God, that when he transformed or left this world and went to be with his father, that it left such a great energy. That's why we get images like that. Look at the top of his head. Look at the images down his side. Look at him on his body and the little. I think that was the spirituality of God leaving a man's body.
That's true. And whatever happened with this cloth was some kind of a tense radiation of some sort that imprinted this image on there. Okay.
That's what I said.
It had to be something like that, Gerald, because you can't burn something like that on the cloth. It would burn the cloth, and there are no, except for the scorch marks. Now that's a different thing that happened at a different time and all that. I'm talking about the actual image is not burned on there like you would burn an image. Okay,
right. I think it's the energy when he left his body as God and went to his father that it left that image on that cloth, just like you saw Moses the
Well,
scene of
listen to what
Moses
they
on Mount
said.
Sinai with God being so bright, that energy has to go somewhere, and it left his body and left that image on that cloth.
Well, listen to what they said would have took to put that imprint, that image on the linen. It would have took 10 billion joules of power. That is more than a lightning bolt. Now, I ask you, who back in medieval times could have done something like that? There ain't no way. I mean, they had no way to do that. The only thing you could have done was put that out, hopefully in the middle of a rainstorm, and pray that lightning would hit it, and then do that. I mean, that don't make sense. But that's what you're talking about here. 10 million joules of power. That's that's more than a lightning bolt. Think about that.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I would expect. The Son of God be able to put out.
Now, going back historically wise, okay, let's talk about that for a moment. All right. And there's another little bit. This is sort of a 3D rendition of the body that was there. Okay. And it
Yeah,
shows the front and the back. You see,
that's
look,
off of their AI rendition of
yeah, you
going
look at
by
the
the marks and the
scourging.
blood on the shroud that would actually show the
Uh-huh.
whippings and the abuse and the wounds that Christ would have had.
Well, that was the cat of nine tails. It was a whip with leather thongs. On the end of each thong was a piece of lead, a spike of lead. And what it would do is when it hit the body, it would rake across the body, tear the body, and then pull the flesh when it came off, sort of like a fish hook in a way, the way it worked. It was horrific. It would actually lay muscle open.
Oh, it would wreak havoc on your body. I mean, it would just tear flesh.
And you can see clearly, if you look at the back of the body, you can see clearly where it hit and when it wrapped around the front of the body. If you look at the front, you can see where it kind of like the thongs sort of were around. See what I'm saying? I mean, it falls in line with the actual thing like that going on here. I mean, this is not. I just don't see how you could still hold up to the theory that this is a fake.
Right.
I mean, it just falls into line with that so many times. But like I said, this may be the actual face of the man on that shroud. Now, I want to say something about this. Somebody said, well, he's not a white guy. No, he's not. He is more of a Mediterranean looking fellow. Okay. What you don't see there is the actual skin tone. It would have been a little bit darker. Okay. He's not white. He's not white. Okay. Put it that way. Although it looks that way in this picture. That's the imagery from the AI doing that. Okay. It's just brightening it up. It's lightening it up so you can see more imagery. That's what it's doing. He would actually have been not real dark, but rather Mediterranean looking, sort of like the Greeks look like today or the Turkish people look like. He would look more like that because he would have stayed being a laborer and not a rich dude. Like I said earlier, the only rich dudes were fat and lazy and they stayed inside. They didn't go out in the sun. This man would have known a lot of days out in the sun. Okay. Absolutely. So he would have had a darker tone to him. Okay.
Well, the other thing is, if you truly believe he's the Son of God, you don't know how God would have made his image, and it might not have. He might not have looked like anybody in the Middle East.
Yeah. Yeah, anybody in the Middle East would, definitely be a little bit darker than that. Although, you know, along racial lines, a lot of stuff went on. Like you have the Palestinians, you have a lot of different racial types in that area. You know, he was Jewish though. He was a Jew. specifically that. And we're going to talk about that historical wise here for a moment. Um, when they took Christ down off the cross, it was late Friday afternoon, right before the Sabbath. Now, their Sabbath is Saturday, but their Sabbath day does not begin until sundown. So they had to take him off the cross in a big hurry to get him down because, according to Jewish law, you do not handle a dead body on the Sabbath day. There's a lot of things you don't do on the Sabbath day. You don't cook on the Sabbath day. You don't travel on the Sabbath day. You're not supposed to even travel. It's a very, very holy time for God, worship of God and do other things like that. Certain things you definitely do not handle dead bodies on the Sabbath. So they had to get in a big hurry and get him down off of that cross. And I think one of the reasons why Joseph of Arimathea gave them uh, the tomb, they had to put him somewhere real quick, okay? Because you didn't just leave a dead body out. Now, Gerald and I were talking about this before the show tonight. Down through history, the shroud has always been part of the death thing, okay? Just like I said, if somebody walks out of the room and you're laying dead on a bed in the room, they usually cover you up. That's the last act of respect you can do for somebody, is to cover their body. And this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, folks. Probably back cavemen covered their fellows up with leaves or something. That was just something that was done to the bodies. Okay, so they had to hurriedly wrap him in linen and get him in that tomb before sundown. Okay, and that's why the three Marys supposedly were coming back 2 days later with the ornaments and spices to finish the burial thing. Okay. And by the way, I was telling Gerald this, even women on a period were not allowed to touch a dead body because they were considered to be impure, by the way, during their period. So they were not allowed to do certain things because they were considered to be unclean during that time. So he definitely, women would not have handled him, especially on a Sabbath day. So that had to hurry and do that. So it was a quick interment. Okay, we got to remember that. That's very important. Now, in the Gospels, two disciples ran to the tomb when they found out he was not there, supposedly. And those two disciples were John the Beloved and Peter. And John got there before Peter did. But Peter went in first when he got there. Now, no, we don't know to this day why he did that. It was kind of rude because John beat him there. Okay. And but Peter went on in. And here's what Peter said. He saw the grave clothes lying there on the shelf. So there is a historical context for this stuff, folks. It is mentioned in Scripture. There are grave clothes mentioned in Scripture. The shroud is mentioned, okay, along with some other things. We're gonna get to that shortly.
Well,
But
and
there is
not only
context.
did he get buried in a high-end tomb from the family, but
Well,
he has also used the bedding clothes, or the burial
Joseph,
shroud was from him also. So it was a high quality shroud.
yeah, Joseph of Arimathea was a wealthy man, so he would not have had a knockdown poverty kind of a tomb. He would have had the best, probably, that money can buy. Um, and it was a borrowed tomb. Here's another thing, and I'm not gonna go too deep into that tonight. But we were talking about ossuaries. They let the body decay until there was nothing but bones. Then we put the bones in the ossuary. That was where your final resting place usually was. Okay. Um, if this took place, like of course, like the scripture says, he was in a borrowed tomb, so it might have not been it was, like I said, a very temporary thing. And he would have ended up, if he had not risen from the dead, he would have ended up in an ossuary. Okay. That's why you'll never find a true ossuary of Jesus, because there wouldn't be one, because he never ended up in an ossuary. But that's what they did. They would let your bones decay. So he was probably in there permanently, although they were getting ready to finish the job because they had to do it very quickly. That's why they were coming back with the spices and all things. It was a form, a sort of what you might call a rich man's mummification kind of thing. You didn't do it the way the Egyptians did, but you did what you could do because the body was going to deteriorate anyway. But there were just certain things you did as respect and love for someone that died, and that was to treat them this way, to put the spices on them, to wrap them up. And now we're going to talk about what was on his head. And that was called the sundarium. Okay. Now, the sundarium, I got a picture of it for you right here. Hold on just a minute. The sundarium, the actual face cloth that went over Christ's head when they took him off the cross, is supposed to be some of those grave clothes laying there in that tomb that Peter saw. Okay. Now, this is it right here. Now, it doesn't have an image on it like the shroud. And it does have bloodstains. If you look, you can see a little bit of a slight image, but it's not like the shroud, okay? But it's got the bloodstains. And if you lay that, now listen to this, it's going to blow your mind too when you think about it. If you overlay this on the shroud, those stains match up. Now, the word sundarium is Latin for sweat rag, sweat cloth, okay, or handkerchief, whatever name you want to put it. It is actual size, is maybe not quite a yard long and maybe 2 foot wide, okay? It would have just covered the head. So like you would cover the head with a pillowcase kind of thing. It would just cover the head, and that's what supposedly they covered his head with this when they took him off the cross. But I cannot tell you for sure if they would have buried that with him on his head, that on his face, under that shroud. I'm not sure about that. I can't say that for sure. Nobody knows for sure if he was actually wearing this when this radiation hit the shroud, because you don't have that imagery on it that you do on the shroud. It could be that was left off when they put the shroud on him. Okay. Now, the shroud, which is often called a winding sheet, they did that in Europe. They wound it around you, and because you look like a mummy when they got down with you almost. They'd wind you up in this sheet. But they did not do that in the Jewish thing. The Jewish people wrapped it head to foot like. That's why it's so big that you see in the other that we showed you in the other picture. It's 8 foot long. Okay, it would go overlap over a body. Okay, you got to remember this man was slightly over 5 foot maybe in height, so this cloth would have covered him completely.
I sent you an old picture that kind of portrays how the shroud would have been on him. If you have that one loaded up somewhere.
Yeah, let's look if I can find that. That's not it right there, is it?
No, it's a paint. It's actually a painting that somebody made.
Oh, a painting. I don't have that. I don't think.
Oh.
Unless it's this. I don't know.
No.
Hold on. Let me see what I got here. That is the actual shroud again. How big it is. See, that would cover a body completely, both front and back. I don't have that, Gerald. I don't know why, but I don't.
That's fine. I just remember sending it to you, and it basically shows the cloth laying down, the body placed on top of the cloth, and then the excess wrapped back over top of them, and that painting kind of showed it.
How it was wrapped. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I never saw that. I don't know if I got it or not. I don't know. But anyway, I don't see it. But anyway, that's what they would have done. You're right. I mean, that's the way they would have done. They would have wrapped it. Probably it would have wrapped it with the feet, ending at the feet, like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it wrapped it the where it started to come back over is at the head, so that's why you have a double image of the head.
Oh, you talking about the front and the back?
Yes, that image that's on the screen right now. There's two pictures of a head on there because it went from the back to the front where it wrapped around the.
Well, that's what you see there, because that's the way it was wrapped, front and back. And you have an image on the front and the back. And it's not, a lot of people think it's just the front, but you've got image of the back as well. So the radiation or whatever this power was that hit it, not only just did it did do the front, it did the whole body. It lit that body up, front and back, and put that image on there. And if it was more than a lightning strike, we're talking about immeasurable power here that could do that. But now that did not happen with the Sundarium. Although you will see bloodstains. You can see the bloodstain out. You can see the outline of the head a little bit, but it's not like that imagery on the shroud. That's why I have to wonder if that was on his head at the time what happened to the shroud happened. See what I'm saying? I don't know. I can't tell you that for sure one way or the other. But it doesn't appear that it was. I don't know. But now, by the way, this is the casket, the ark that is kept in. That's the Sundarium's ark, and it is in a church in Spain where that's kept, I think, or in Italy. I'm sorry, I think it's in a church in Italy. No, what I've got to bring up next is called the Veil of Veronica, and here it is. Okay, I know it doesn't look like a whole lot, but if you look very close at it, the imagery of that, you can see a faint outline of a face. Now, what you're looking at is the head of someone, and the hair sticking down on both sides. So this long hair is hanging down on both sides, and the beard is in the middle. Okay.
Yep.
So you got the whole outline of the head, and you can, if you look very closely at it, and you would have to be in the presence of this to really see it more. There is an outline of a face there, okay, but it's very faint. Now, this is Veronica's veil, and she was supposedly wearing, you can see through this thing. Let me show you another picture of him. This is what he looks like when it's on display, okay? I'm going to explain a minute what all this is about here, but that's how it looks when it's on display, okay? And the church venerates this more because it also lines up, supposedly bloodstain wise, with the shroud in some ways. But it wasn't actually a grave cloth on him. You understand what I'm saying? But it does line up with some of the blood stains, the way the blood went on there. Okay. She supposedly wiped his face with this and all that, and miraculously the image supposedly appeared to it. That's the story of Veronica's veil. Now here's one more shot of it, and I want to explain why it looks like this. Okay, that's a long shot of it. It is actually encased on a sheet of gold, and the gold is around it, and some of the gold is over it so that you can see the outline of the head. But the reason this has to be superimposed on that because it's a veil. It's not a linen cloth, it's a veil.
Right.
Probably made out of some kind of probably silk or something like that. So it's a different context thing. But supposedly the bloodstains kind of match a little bit with the But now that headcloth I showed you earlier, it does match completely with the bloodstains on the shroud on that. What do you think about that, Drew?
Yeah, that's interesting that they have all these artifacts still. I mean, you have churches and cathedrals out there that, still has the crown of thorns. They still have the robe, the tunic that Jesus wore. They still have nails that he was nailed to the cross with. They supposedly have his sandals, and they have little pieces of the cross, and they also have sections of the sign that supposedly said
And
King of the Jews.
supposedly they have the sign part of it that hung on the actual cross. It was in 3 different languages. King of the Jews. It was in Hebrew, it was in Greek, and it was in Latin. They supposedly have that sign in the Vatican. Who knows what else they got in the Vatican? Ain't no telling. But that's supposedly where that's at.
Well, a lot of it, I think, was collected because of the interest of Alexander the Great's mother, Catherine.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Constantine's mother. The Emperor Constantine's mother. She actually,
Constantine. I'm sorry.
she's the one that actually went to the Holy Land and found Golgotha. And supposedly found parts of the true cross. And she's also the one that came up with the Spear of Destiny. Okay. I actually heard the latest rumor I've heard on the Spear of Destiny is that Donald Trump's got it. Okay. Anyway,
I haven't heard that one.
Here's the funny thing about the Spear of Destiny. There's about 9 or 10 of them in the world today. I think something like that. Which one is the real thing? You have to wonder. But that's the whole thing about a lot of this, Gerald, is you get into a murky area of these things. Is there was so much veneration going on, so much forgery, fake stuff put out there for a lot of these relics, that were not, they didn't have any laws and all that back in the day. You can get away with doing a lot of this stuff,
Well, a lot of the cathedrals or the churches, if you want to call them that, they all have little fragments of wood encased just like that veil, with the gold and the crystals and the stones, and it's supposed to be little pieces of the actual cross that Jesus hung on.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a rumor supposedly of a relic that actually was a metal cross that had a hidden compartment in it. I'm trying to think of the name of the cross. It's very well known, supposedly, antiquity.
You're talking about the one in the Basilica of the Holy Cross in
something
Jerusalem?
like that. It's the Holy Cross or something. I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, it supposedly has a secret compartment in it, and it has the 3 nails supposedly used on Christ in the and it will supposedly heal you or heal diseases, do all that stuff like that.
That's what I was saying. It's in the Basilica of the Holy Cross in Jerusalem.
Yeah, something like that. It's supposed to have a secret compartment in it. That's where the nails are, supposedly, or one of the nails. Anyway, you hear a lot of this stuff, of course. A lot of legends and fables and stories, but you have to wonder what's authentic sometimes. Some of this has an authenticity to it that,
Well, speaking of that,
wonder about
NASA has proven that there was an eclipse at the time of what would have been Jesus's crucifixion to have the 3 hours of darkness.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot of things happen on that day. It was very extraordinary day because you only even had a resurrection, a small resurrection that took place supposedly. I talked about that last show we did. The veil was rent in the temple. A mercy seat had blood on it from the cross. Supposedly all of this took place on that day during those 3 hours of darkness. And the reason there was a darkness is because the Creator had to turn his back on planet Earth. He had to look away. He took his grace off of this planet for just a few hours. He had to look away because he could not look at his own son, because his son had all the sins of the world on him. God cannot look on sin. That's one of the things God can't do. He can't look on sin. That's why when he looks on his children, he must see the blood of his son on them, because he was the blood of what? Atonement and redemption. He can see
Right.
that. Then he can see you. That's what I'm saying. But he cannot look on sin and remain God. He can't look on sin. You can't look on sin and remain perfect, holy, and righteous.
Right.
It just don't
So
work
not
that way.
not only do we have NASA that proved that, during their 6th hour to the 9th hour that we had darkness, which was 2 hours and 57 minutes
Well,
actually.
like I said, it was late afternoon. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when he died on the cross, and that's why I said they had to hurry up and get him down, because sunset would have been in water, probably around 5:30 or something like that.
Then we have
Sun,
historical writings that
yeah,
also talk about the eclipse on that day and the earthquake happening and renting
that
the
was a sun
stones.
eclipse of the sun. Suppose that's why the sun, the sun darkened. That's why everything went dark. Suppose it was an earthquake too, very bad earthquake, and that's when the temple veil got rent. And what that, of course, was the symbol was, you don't need this anymore. You don't have to do any of this anymore. You don't have to come to the Ark of the Covenant. You don't have to tie a rope on the priest's leg and drag him out anymore. You don't have to do anything. It's been done. The sacrifice has been made, and it was accepted. It was acceptable. And that's why you see these things happen in order like that, because it was a very specific way about going about things. And that's why I still can't think of the guy's name, Ron something, who said supposedly found the Ark of the Covenant under Golgotha in a cave up under where the cross stood. And he said that there was still dried blood on it from that cross. Jesus' blood had to go on the mercy seat. That was an act of God. That wasn't just something that happened. That was supposed to be that way. We call that manifest destiny. It was supposed to be like that. And the interesting thing, girl, is in the garden that night when they came to arrest him. And I think you made a good point the other time we talked about that. You said that they had to kiss him to show who he was, because they wanted to be sure absolutely who it was they were arresting. It's like you would with a search warrant. You got, if I were to go to serve a search warrant on you tonight, I better make really sure I get in big trouble if I serve it on the wrong person. Okay, if I'm gonna put it on you and I put it on somebody else, I'm in big trouble. That's kind of what happened that night. But here's the interesting background on that. Okay, Judas Iscariot was good friends with Jesus. They were friends. All of his disciples were friends with each other. They were good friends. They were a good group of friends. And Jesus, what did Jesus tell them? Said, the greatest love you could have for your friend is what? To lay down your life for him. He loved all of his disciples. He said, I love every one of you, but one of you is the devil.
Right.
One of you is the bad guy. But they were good friends. So Judas Iscariot betrayed his friend, his good friend. And he didn't do it just for money. Oh, that was part of it. That was sort of the seal of the deal, We got to pay you to make it look like a transaction, okay? That's the way that goes. But he thought he could force Jesus's hand to get rid of the Romans. He thought, if I
Right.
do this, Jesus is going to have to do something now. I force his hand, he'll have to kill all these Romans for us and free us. But it didn't work out that way. But he did what he did for all of the wrong reasons. When you look at it that way, that's the way that goes. He did it for all the wrong reasons. And that's why we always say the road to hell is paved with what, Gerald? Good intentions. Maybe
You know that
Judas had good intentions, but but here what it is, what happened with Judas Iscariot, he believed a lie. He believed the wrong thing. He believed the untruth. But what did Jesus say to him that night in the garden is very interesting. What was said that night, a lot of people skip over that and they don't really get exactly what he was saying. But Jesus looked at Judas and but he wasn't talking to Judas, by the way. He was talking to Satan, who was in Judas. Okay. Judas was possessed. Okay. He said, you know what? If it wasn't allowed, you could not do this. But nevertheless, this is your hour and the power of darkness. This is a high water mark. This is all you're going to be able to do. Because that was the plan. That was the plan of God all along. This was the plan. This had been planned since way before Abraham and Isaac.
right.
But Satan, Lucifer the loser, as I like to call him, this loser thought he was going to win this one. Oh, I'm going to kill the Son of God here. I'm going to win. He even had Judas believe in this, John. See, okay, that it was all his plan. He thought his plan got superseded by God's plan.
Right.
That's the way that went. Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing I think of when we tell this story is that Jesus was the most recognized person on that, in the Middle East, especially those villages, because he was doing miracles and he had the 12 disciples with him all the time, and everybody knew him. Even the Pharisees and all of them knew who Jesus was, but yet they had to have him be recognized by somebody. They should have known just by looking at him. So why weren't they able to recognize Jesus without Judas kissing him on the cheek?
Well, that was just to seal the deal, I think, Gerald. I
No,
think
I'm just saying they should have been able to
yeah.
recognize
Oh,
Jesus. He was the
well,
most famous person
there
in
was.
that whole land.
You're right
They
about
didn't
that.
need. It was biblical that Jesus or Judas had to do it. I mean, that was spiritual, obviously. But I'm just saying,
No, I
all
understand what
those
you mean.
soldiers, all those
No, you're
people
making
should
a
have
good
known
point.
exactly who Jesus was.
You're
Why
making
didn't he look like himself? Why wasn't he recognizable?
you're making a good point because there was a lot of supernatural stuff going on too. Okay. And there was one instance in the temple right before all this took place where they were getting ready to grab him. They knew who he looked. They knew what he looked like. Okay. Okay. They knew what he was like. They were getting ready to grab him, and he walked right down through the middle of them. They couldn't see him.
Right? Yeah, he walked through walls.
So you got some supernatural stuff going on here. I mean, it wasn't some normal stuff. Definitely not. Uh, but Jesus had a supernatural nature to him. He was the Son of God after all. But like I say, this was the plan. God's plan is what took place. And by the way, the Ark of the Covenant is not in a warehouse somewhere. Man does not, I don't think, have that. It's what those angels told Ron White. That's his name. I couldn't think of his name. Ron White. They told him, look, the day will come when this will be given over. But until then, it has its place to be, and it belongs to God. The Ark of the Covenant belongs to God. Man's not going to have it. Okay. We weren't even allowed to touch it without getting killed, by the way. It was so holy. It was a part of God. And it was a transmitter, definitely. God talked through it. And it was his connection to earth, put it that way. And I guarantee you it still exists somewhere in this world, but it's going to remain hidden until, like those angels said, until the day is at hand when it is needed. But I don't think it's in a warehouse anywhere.
I mean, just like the table of showbread or the candlestick. I mean, they're there. We just don't know where they are.
Yep.
All that has to be brought back into the temple.
Well, the thing about Jesus, I don't think he stood out as an extraordinary looking people. He was an ordinary looking man. In that respect, because he had the man part of him too. He was human as well. Uh, if you were in his presence, you might have felt something. If you were very spiritual, you might have felt something. You know what I'm saying? You might have known that spiritually, faithful wise. But just looking at him, I'm saying, he might have looked just like any other normal person. He didn't glow and he didn't stand out. You know what I'm saying? In that respect. But
I
I
mean,
think the seal of the deal is why he had to kiss him. That was part of the plan. That's you gonna be. And what did he say to him? Do you betray me with a kiss?
I understand that. I that's obviously a religious sacrament, kissing one on the cheek. But
Mhm.
yet it was a double-edged sword. But I'm just saying,
Well, that's sort of the
I
height of
think
hypocrisy.
hang on a second, Dennis. I think that Jesus was already transforming, and just like you talked about when they tried to capture him before, he could change his appearance or he did not look earthly necessarily. So that's why they did not recognize him in the garden, because he was already transcending.
Well, and like I said, that was the height of hypocrisy. You go betray somebody by kissing them. I mean, you don't get much more hypocritical than that, do you?
That's where we get the
I
kiss
think
of death.
that was done, I think, to show the absolute true nature of evil. You know what I'm saying?
The kiss of death.
Mm-hmm. It says the woman used her own funeral ornament to watch Jesus see. It was known to the king to be sacrificed in lamb. It was on. It was part of the plan. But Satan thought he could thwart it. He thought he could screw it up, mess up, just like he's done everything else. He thought he could screw it up. But this was for the whole bag of marbles here. It was very, very important that this went to go down the way it did. But it was the will of God, and that all this take place. That's the important part of it.
Right.
But whether or not this is really the true burial shroud of Christ or the headcloth or whatever, you got to remember his words to Thomas. You have seen and you believed, but blessed are they who have never seen and believed. Things like the shroud, crosses, blessed crosses, things like that, like I've said before, they are emblems of faith. Something to hang, the hook to hang your faith on. I'm not saying your whole faith should be hanging on that, but it magnifies your faith to a certain extent. It helps your faith live to a certain extent. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure there's everything that evil hates about that. That's not a good thing. Evil doesn't like that. But it magnifies your faith. It's a good thing. But you don't put your faith on something like the shroud or a cross or a necklace or whatever the situation is. That's not what your true faith lies in. It lies in God, your maker, your creator. To me, that speaks volumes. So no matter if we have these relics, if they do exist, and I believe this may be the real thing. I mean, the more I see it stack up, the more I kind of believe it. But still, even if we do have the burial cloth of Christ, you got to remember one important thing about it. He don't need it anymore. He's way past that. He's living forever now. Burial cloth of anybody is a usable thing, okay? Especially for him. He's not in that tomb. He's still not covered up or buried with that cloth. He didn't need it anymore. I've often seen pictures of that artist rendition of that cloth being carefully folded and laying there on that empty shelf. I wouldn't doubt if it wasn't, because guess what they found in that tomb when they went in there besides those burial cloths, Gerald? Remember that? 2 angels sitting in there.
Right.
2 angels sitting there. And one of them says, why do you look for the living among the dead?
Right. He that you are searching is not here.
Yep.
I mean, that's a good point, Dennis, that no matter what you have, whether you think it's a chellish relic or whatever, it's not your faith in that object. It's your faith in Christ and what he has done for us that we put our faith in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not our faith. It's Christ. It's God's faith. That's what we need to believe in for what he has done for us, his works, not ours.
Oh yeah. But we've talked about a lot of this stuff in the past, where the forces of darkness try to screw things up, and try to thwart the plan of God. But God puts in the motion and action on these things. They can't stop it. That's why I say, the darkness is going to always lose. We got to remember one thing that's very important for us, and I've been thinking a lot about it lately. The more nearer we get to the light, the more the darkness will hate us. We've got to expect that sooner or later we've got to get ready for our confrontation with the darkness. We've got to be ready when evil comes looking for us, and it's going to do that. It's going to come looking for us, whether it breaks in our house or meets us in a Walmart parking lot or whatever the situation is, or our government comes after us, whatever the situation. We've got to understand to look for the victory like Jesus got. And evil come looking for him one day, kissed him on the cheek, but he won in the end. He won over it. He said, "Be of good cheer, for I have conquered the world. I have conquered death and hell." And that's one thing we got to remember. We can be winners, not losers. The bad guys want us to be the losers. They want
Right.
us to be the victims. But we don't have to be. We have a choice, you know. But when evil and darkness come looking for you, and like I said, we got to remember, the closer we get to the light, the goodness, the more they're going to hate us, the more they're going to work against us. But that's okay. That shows we're on the right track. That shows we're doing what we need to be doing. But we've got to understand that that's part of the territory. That's part of the action. Every action has a reaction in this universe. Okay. And we got to understand that when evil comes looking for us, we got to be ready. Okay. Don't let it get you off guard. Be ready for it. Jesus was ready for it that night in that garden. He was ready for it. Although he faltered for a while there, he was only human too. He's 100% human, 100% God. You got to look at it that way. He sweat blood and tears there that night in that garden. Angels had to come help him. He was down, way down. Even his friends went to sleep. And even went to sleep on him, okay? And he was deserted alone with his fate, his manifest destiny, you know? And he stepped up for the battle. He stepped up. He could have chucked it all. He could have said, "Okay, I'm leaving planet Earth. Get me out of here, Dad. Take me on out of here. I don't have to put up with this stuff." But he knew what his fate was. He knew what he had to do. He did the job. And that's why God sent him, because he knew he could depend on him. We often call Jesus the second Adam, because the first one really messed up. But the second one did the job. But that's the way it went. JoJo said I was attacked for 2 years when I started my journey and was getting closer to my big awakening. You will get attacked. You might well know that's part of the price you pay. But that's okay. It means you're doing the right thing, That's what Jesus said. I think one part of the scriptures. I forget exactly the word, Gerald. I know you heard this before, but it's worth saying again. He said that one day's gonna come and you're gonna get knocked down and stomped on. Should you get up and wash your face and smile and go on, because you are doing exactly what you need to do. You are exactly where you need to be. So what he said, be of good cheer, because you are exactly where you need to be in the will of God.
Yep.
Because darkness is going to come after you. I know how it is to wear a target on your back, because I have done it. Okay, you got a target on you, you can expect it. Okay, but don't worry, you got, that's like I said the other day, there's a whole lot more on our side than against us. Okay. And I believe without a doubt, and we need to, as people, we need to keep watching. Keep watching, because the good guys are letting us in to having that information a little bit at a time. We're getting it. We're getting the info we need. They're revealing the secrets we need and all this. This is the war. This is the spiritual warfare that they're waging, not us, by the way. We're waging a different kind. They're waging a spiritual warfare in our favor. We got to remember that. They're out there 10-1 against the bad guys. I like them odds. I don't know about you, but I like those kind of odds. Okay. But we got to remember that. We can't lose sight. We can't forget that. Okay. Because it's very important that we realize we're not in this battle alone, you know. Yeah, because he lives, I can face tomorrow. That's very true, man. Absolutely.
Right.
I'm reading some of the comments here. See, we got any questions or anything? Anybody got any questions on what we've been talking about tonight? Now's your time. Girl's waiting
You,
on, right?
yeah, you can share your highlighted new member
Mhm.
while we're waiting.
Oh yeah, that's my new member, Cindy Wendy. Appreciate, glad to have you aboard, Cindy Wendy. If you're out there, dear, good to
Bring
have
it
you
up on
aboard.
screen.
The comments are moving fast tonight.
They are.
Trying to get back to your link there, but I can't find it.
Oh, I was telling you to bring up your the one that you starred for Cindy. Bring that up on screen so everybody can see it. Just click on it.
Yeah, I was gonna try to get back to it, but I don't know if my mouse is gonna hold up to it or not. I got your thing there. There's Gerald's link,
Oh,
everyone, for his new merchandise shop there. Okay, check it out. Go knock on his door there.
there you go. We got all kinds of great items. We got t-shirts and coffee cups and hats and sweatshirts and all kinds of nice stuff. So thank you if you go over there and check out the merchandise. And it's also in conjunction with Robert Bauer, the Nexus. He has merchandise there also, and also our other podcasts that me and Robert and Jim Goodall and Clay from Conspiracy Music and Mr. B from the Truth Seekers. We have merchandise up there for the Geezer Geeks. So we got 3 or 4 shops all on one website. So be sure to check it all out.
Well,
Even
answer
find,
your question
even
there,
find
John
Zero
Portman.
Sounds on there.
John Portman says it doesn't make sense that God cannot view the sun not when also being on this. Well, you can't look on sin. So Jesus had all the sins of the world on him. He was the sacrificial lamb. He couldn't look at him right then. He had to turn his back on him, because all the sins that ever were and ever would be were hanging on him. God cannot look on sin. He can't allow that, because if you look on sin too much, it does something to you. Evidently, it affects you. It gets in your system. It's an infection, like. So he could not look on that and remain righteous. There's certain, I always find it interesting, Gerald, that God has his own set of rules. You always hear people complain about rules. There's too many rules. I hate rules. Throw the rules out the window. Even God has rules that he lives by. And if he can do that, you certainly, you know what I'm saying? Uh, if he
Well,
does it, being God,
there's a difference between God having rules for us to live by to honor him, and the Pharisees of the time man-made rules to honor the Pharisees, not God. That was all man-made.
it says nature of God should be immutable by outside, not be mutable by outside influence. Yeah, well, he probably just not want to look on sin. It's not his nature. It's something completely abhorrent to him. Just like you wouldn't want to look at something terrible, something awful looking. You might not want to look at it. He had that. I could say I don't think that God would actually be destroyed by looking on sin, but he just doesn't want to look at it. He could, I guess, if he wanted to, he could. He can do anything he wants to. He's God. Okay, he has nothing behind him like that. But he just doesn't want to look. He has chosen not to do that.
Absolutely.
Who am I to question?
Just put your faith in the right place, not in man.
There's Cindy Wendy. Okay, I'm gonna. She says, Jesus shown his glory to me while I was watching the first special of 3D likeness. Oh, okay.
Yeah, take down my banner and bring that picture back up. I'd like to see it again myself.
Oh, okay. I'm moving in different time lengths here. I'm looking at another screen on that.
There you go. Now bring that AI picture back up. I really like that AI picture.
Here, I'll put Cindy Wendy up. You know what she was saying. Why would he want to look at me? I'm nothing. Oh, no, you are something with Cindy Wendy. Absolutely. He died for you. That makes you very special. Don't ever forget that. You were worth dying for. You can't get much more worth than that out of something. Okay, that's very important. If you
That's
were worth
right. We're all
dying
children of God.
for.
And if you are born again and believe as Jesus Christ is our Savior, then you are the bride of Christ.
Well, I've often thought about that, Gerald. It's a shame, really, to think how many people have turned their backs on that gift. How many people will lose out on the wonderful things that God has in store for them because they turn their back on that gift. It's a gift. You can't buy it. You can't do anything to get it. You don't get any points to get it. You don't save any stamps in the green stamp book, okay, to get it. There's no way to get it. It is a gift already given to you. The greatest gift of all, the greatest gift of love. All you got to do is accept it. But if you turn your back on it, look how much you're losing in the end.
Right.
Look how much you're doing to yourself, because God says he looks at all of us, no matter who it is, no matter what our skin color is, our religion is, or our financial situation is, or what. He doesn't see that. He sees us as valuable assets, as his children. You are worth something to him. He died for you. He gave the ultimate sacrifice. He said, there is no greater love than one lays down his life for another. Think about it. There's nothing greater, no greater love than that. Your dog can't love you that good. Your wife and your husband can't love you like that. Your children can't love. God is the greatest love of all. And he thought you were worth it. He still does. But that's horrible to think you turn your back on something like that.
Right.
To me, it don't make sense.
Well, that's the problem these days. I mean, people forget that we live in the world and not supposed to live of the world.
Yeah. But I think he had to turn his back that day. I think that was part of the plan. He could not look on the sin. The sacrifice was being made. It probably hurt God so bad he couldn't look. To me, that makes a lot of sense too. You know what I'm saying? Something that's so
Well,
traumatic. Your first beloved, your son.
right.
It would be hard for you to look at something like that. You
Just
know.
look at how you would feel if you lost your son or daughter or your child. I mean, I imagine God had the same feelings, even though it's on a spiritual level.
Yep.
His only begotten son.
A lot of mysteries in that. Absolutely. So, in conclusion, girl, how do you think? What do you think about the shroud? What's your concluding
I
thoughts
think the
on it?
shroud is real, and I really do think that that AI image is a real close likeness. I mean, that's how I would imagine it. I mean, I've always liked the other renditions, but this one really strikes me for some reason, really resonates with me. And and obviously I'm a Christian and I'm a Bible believing Christian, and so I believe in the shroud and the crucifixion and that Jesus died for our sins.
How about the Sundarium? What do you think about it?
I believe that could be there too. I mean, there was other pieces of cloth or clothing that was used, like like Veronica's veil and
Yeah.
the face cloth, and then we have the shroud. And
Well, I can see somebody keeping something like that. You
because
know,
it was a personal possession of theirs, and like Veronica's veil. I mean, that was what she was wearing, and she felt the love for Christ so bad that she was trying to take care of him, try to attend to his needs, and she was wiping off his face with her veil. So
yep. I believe some of these things are real. I think to a certain degree. I mean, how can you explain it otherwise in many ways, you know? But, there are certain sectors of our society that want to tear these things down. They are enemies of faith. If people want to believe that, what's the harm in that? You know what I'm saying?
well
If it
they
bolsters their faith, but you got so many people out there that are always looking to tear somebody down or tear their faith
well
down. Or,
they don't want to believe in it, Dennis. Just like I said,
they,
you
they
live in
don't
the
want to
world, not of the world. So
believe.
they don't want to believe in what we're talking about because they would be condemning themselves and they would have to change, and they don't want to change. They don't want to give up the world.
They don't want you.
That's why they put it down.
They don't want to believe, and they don't want you to believe either. That's just the way they look at it, But
We're a reminder of their sin.
that's the way evil works, you know. And I've said so many times before. That's the enemies of faith and light, and goodness and love. They're out there actively working against these things. They want to tear us down. They want to tear it all down because they don't want that. They're working for the bad guys. Examine yourself, as that old saying used to go. Don't, Jesus said, don't worry about pulling the beam out of your brother's eye. Worry about the beam in your own eye. Sweep around your own door still. Worry about yourself before you start worrying about somebody else's thing. Make
Right.
sure, you know what? One of the most warning verses in the Bible is one of the most interesting, and that is work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. What that means, folks, you better get it right. You
Right.
better get it right this first time, You better know you're in the right without a doubt on whatever it is you believe. You
That's what
better
it's
know.
all about. Satan's number one job is to get us to doubt our faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He can't do nothing against God, so he has to come at the children of God. That's the only thing he can do. And if he can create doubt in one person to not believe in God and that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, then that is his mission. That is his goal.
Yep. But yeah, like I say, make sure the right side you're on. Make sure you're on the right side and not the wrong side. Like I said, that road to hell is paved with good intentions. Uh, and that is so very true. I know that's not in the Bible, but it is a very true saying because it definitely is. Uh, we need to examine ourselves closely and make sure that what we believe is the true and right thing. You know, I've had a lot of people come to all religions have got a little bit of truth in them, but that don't make them all right. Okay. I mean, that's just the way you got to look at it. They're not all right. They can't all be right because they believe in so many different things altogether. You got to go with which one everyone offers you the truth because the truth will really, truly make you free. The real truth, Don't be like Pontius Pilate. What is truth? That was what he asked Jesus. What is truth? And yet the truth was standing right there in front of him. How blind can you be? If the blind leads the blind, Jesus said, they'll both fall in the ditch.
Yeah.
Don't blind yourself.
He was in a tough spot. He had the Pharisees and the Jewish people on one side and Rome and Caesar on the other side, the government, and he was caught in the middle to make a decision.
That's right. Sure says, life is like a buffet line. If you're on plate, focus on yourself, not what others choose. Well, Shiro, you got to look out for yourself because in the end, you're the only one that can punch your own ticket. Nobody else, No matter how much you want to save somebody else or do something for somebody, you can only do about yourself. That's the way. And that's why I said earlier, examine yourself, make sure you're right, because that's the only thing you can do anything about when you look at the big picture, okay?
Yeah.
You can stand, you can talk till you're blue in the face, or as Jesus said, don't cast your pearls before swine. Don't give your best to people that don't care. You know what I'm saying? Or are not going to listen to you, whatever. Don't do that. Just look out for yourself. Make sure you're in the right. That's the only thing you can do. Everybody else going to have to work out their own way to do it. That's just the way that goes. So.
Yep, you're going to be judged for your actions and your beliefs as nobody else's. It doesn't matter how good a person your father or mother or brother and sister or friends or anything. It's what's in your heart and what you believe.
Oh yeah. And JoJo said I had voices telling me nothing but bad things for 40 years. Just flip that script and you are more than worthy. It's just the bad guys want you to think that you're not worthy. Absolutely. Like I said, they want to make you a victim. They want to make you think you're not worth it and that God doesn't care about you. Now, here's the weird thing, Gerald. When something bad goes happen, who's the first thing you blame?
God.
God. That's just where that goes. That's being human, but really, there's no excuse for that. God had nothing to do with a lot of that stuff,
Well, you read that. You read that in the Bible all the time. God, why have you forsaken me? Well, He hasn't forsaken you.
Well, most of the time, it's really our own fault.
Absolutely.
But we want to put it on somebody else. That's the way that goes.
There's consequences for your decisions and your actions.
Yep. Well, like I say, you can, what Jesus said very plainly. Don't worry about the beam in your brother's eye. Don't worry about it. Ain't nothing you can do about that. Okay. You got to worry about the beam in your own eye. That's what you can do something about.
Right.
Yeah. That's very true.
People in glass houses shouldn't throw rocks.
I'm going to tell you something. Okay. The more I know about people, the more I understand. No matter, they're going to believe what they want to believe, no matter what. Okay.
Right.
But just be sure that what you believe is the real truth. That's what you got to worry about.
Well, we talk about the Holy Trinity. We talk about the Holy Trinity between God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, but our existence, our body is also a Holy Trinity. We have our mind, soul, and our body. So protect your heart, protect your soul.
Yep. Like I say, you can only look out for yourself, no matter how much you want. I know you may want to help other people to do things. There's nothing wrong with that. You can talk to them and try to help them and do what. But in the end, you are the only one you have got to answer
Right.
for. That's just the way that
And
goes.
and be careful when you help people. Don't be surprised if you get a kiss on the cheek.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. That's probably coming. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
You ain't gonna be far behind. But
Well, Dennis, what do you think? Think we're I think we've done pretty good tonight.
yeah, I thought it was a pretty good show tonight. It was very interesting. Like I say, this is one of the most interesting modern day mysteries that we have out there. The Shroud of Turin, has always been fascinating to me. I have studied it, followed it for many, many years. Um, to me, it's a fascinating mystery. I think it's solved almost, though. I believe I just don't see, there's more pluses than minuses on it. That's all I can say. Right now, there's more pluses than minuses.
Well, someday we will know the truth.
Yep, that's right. But like I say, you're not supposed to worship a piece of cloth. You're not supposed to do that. That's not. I mean, it's good to know these things. It's good to venerate something. There's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
But you don't hang all of your faith on a piece of cloth or metal or whatever the situation is. That's not how faith truly works.
No,
But
it's just confirmation on what we believe.
yeah, but it's interesting to talk about these things, no matter
Absolutely.
which way you look at it. Well, it's been a fantastic show, and we really appreciate all the comments and talking that we've had going on here tonight, the questions and observations. We appreciate it. Like I said before, these are your podcasts too. That's why we like for you to participate in it. Okay. So that's good. That's always a good thing. Talking about doing good things, participating is a good thing. Absolutely. And we appreciate you all being here tonight and participating with us. Absolutely. Who knows what Gerald and I are going to come up with next week, but don't forget, we'll be out there looking at it, okay?
That's
We'll be out
right.
there working on it.
We'll have something special again next week.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. And, but this has been a really fascinating hour and a half here. And we really appreciate you all coming in tonight. And now Wednesday night on Hunting the Shadows, our 50th show. Okay, we're gonna do some special stuff on that.
Oh wow, nice.
And what you got coming up this week again, Cheryl?
Well, Wednesday we'll probably be doing the Night Owl Lounge like we usually do. And then Saturday I'll be on the Geezer Geek Show with Professor Bauer and Conspiracy Music Clay and Jim Goodall and myself and Mr. B from Australia. And then Sunday we have Piercing the Veil, 6 p.m. Central on Midwest Night Watchers. And if anybody wants to get a hold of us, me or Chiro, you can always send us an email at midwestnightwatchers@gmail.com. And something else that we just brought forward, we are doing our audio podcast now on Spotify and iHeart and Apple Podcasts. So anywhere you can get your podcasts from, your favorite platforms, we will be there. We have a few of our shows up there now, and we also have video on Rumble and Spotify as well.
Sounds good. And of course, you can reach me at DennisWGarrell.com, or if you want to email me, DennisWGarrell@gmail.com. You can find me there.
Yeah.
All right.
Send us some emails. Let us know what you think, or if you have any subjects or anything you want us to talk about, send us an email and we'll dig into it. Oh, and don't forget on Midwest Night Watchers on YouTube, we also have the 24/7 cameras going outside so you can watch animals or anything that's moving around at night, who knows what you'll see.
Sounds fantastic. All right, sir. We will catch you on the rebound then.
All right.
And we appreciate you all being here tonight, and persevere out there. And remember, whenever you get that chance, you take that road less traveled. Okay?
That's
All
right.
All right. Until we get together again then.
All right. Love you all. Love yourself, love your neighbor, and do kind things for someone else.
There you go.